my intention is not to read a bunch of stats and benefits and features. The intent this morning is to help you understand who the target audience is, and it's not just one audience, and then how you might be able to reach out to them and incorporate this product into your portfolio and become a bigger part of what you do. So for those of you who are on and this is a new product consideration for you, I hope you'll get something out of it. For those of you who've written it in the past, I hope that you likewise will find some nuggets that you can take away. There are really two phases as you look at this product category. The first phase is the one that happens at the very front end. So it takes place really before your person has taken their trip. So most people realize that they don't buy their plane ticket or their cruise or their tour event today and then take the trip today. It's something that people will do weeks and many times months in advance. And so it's important to recognize that for those people who are putting a large deposit down or sometimes paying for an entire trip in advance, that they understand that that investment could be lost for reasons that they just didn't anticipate. A sudden illness, for example, keeps you from taking a trip. And this is a real-world example that happened to my father-in-law. Retired, was going to take a trip of a lifetime to New Mexico to take a hunting trip. Turns out he had to postpone it because of health. He ended up taking it later. But it was one of those things where his deposit was lost as a result of not being able to take the trip. So that's just one of several examples that can come to mind. So as a person's putting down that deposit for that cruise or that tour or that kind of thing, those things are generally lost if they don't have some kind of protection, trip cancellation protection that they've purchased previously. So as you're looking at your clients and talking to them, that may be a dead obvious thing that comes to mind. One of the other things that happens that you might not think about, illness, that kind of thing, is what happens if the weather hits. We all, if you've had your news on in the last couple of weeks, seen what's happened on the East Coast. They're being hit again with a bunch of rain this morning as I left to come into work, but a couple of weeks ago they had 7 feet of snow, if you can imagine that. So if you were in Buffalo and you were planning to take a trip and couldn't get to the airport, let alone get on the plane if you were there, that would be another good example of something that's outside of your control. That would be a situation where a trip cancellation policy could step in and reimburse those costs for the fact that the trip was canceled through no cause of your own. So as you're talking to folks, keep those kinds of things in mind, help them understand that the investment in protecting that down payment or sometimes a full payment for a trip is something to consider. One of the things that doesn't happen as much publicly as it does privately, because when tour operators go out of business, there usually aren't a lot of fanfare about it, but tour operators do go out of business. It's not uncommon for that kind of thing to happen, especially if you're working with small tour operators. So get one more thing as you're talking with your clients who are making a plan to go on a large trip, that they understand that there are just things that are beyond just getting sick or just having a delayed connection be a part of the process. The second part of trip cancellation that is often overlooked, even by those who are in the business, so to speak, is phase 2. What happens after you leave? Well, once you're on the road, particularly if you're leaving the U.S., if you're in the U.S. and you get sick, you're in Hawaii, you've made a long trip, but your U.S. health insurance will cover you while you're there. Trip cancellation can include coverage for medical expenses that are incurred while you're abroad. So as you're in the Bahamas, for example, you're windsurfing or riding a jet ski and you're injured. Now what? Do you know the currency? Do you speak the language? Do you know how to identify a hospital that would be able to treat you, and so on? And if you don't, what would you do? Well, in the case of our trip cancellation policies, you have our assistance department, 800 number that works internationally that you can call, and they can direct you to the person or the facility locally that you would need to go to get treated. And as far as the expenses that you incur, how do you take care of those things? You've got a trip cancellation policy with that benefit included. Those expenses that you incur abroad can have insurance to cover those things as you go. Worst case scenario, what happens if you're injured on that same jet ski and you have to be brought back to the United States unexpectedly, maybe with the kind of medical care that would happen in a serious accident. Medical evacuation would be one of those things that people just don't think about when they're making that trip off to sand and sun here when it's cold in our country. One of the things that you just want to, when you're talking with your clients, taking the trips, help them understand, here are the real kinds of things that will happen. And that last category of things is people who have obligations at work. They will sometimes, as a result of something at work, not be able to take that trip. What happens if you have to cancel your trip? So having that cancel for any reason or cancel for work reasons, right or added, will be a concern, particularly if you are talking with people who have positions, say a physician, for example, who might have their pager or their cell phone ring and say, okay, we need you to come in, and you're the expert in our area for that particular thing. They're not getting on a plane today to take off. What happens if, when you start looking at things that you've booked well in advance, maybe you're going skiing, you're going to golf on your vacation, you prepay for those kinds of things or make reservations that would require that you pay even if you don't arrive. Those are the kinds of things that the trip cancellation policies would be a good fit for. So at this point, I'm going to read the questions. I've had several come in, and so bear with me while I read those questions this morning. One of the questions is, do you have to have a special license? Short answer is no. If you are appointed with us currently, your health and life license is sufficient. There's no extra travel license. I know some states have a license that's, that you can get just if you're working in the travel industry. In this case, you don't need a special license. Second question looks like, who is my rep? I tell you what, I will have your rep. I see your name there. I will have your rep reach out to you specifically. I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize for not knowing that. So I will look and see if there are more questions. Bear with me. Are there restricted countries? There are a few restricted countries, rather. I don't know off the top of my head. North Korea comes to mind, Afghanistan. There are a few places where the travel insurance is not going to be available. You don't need to guess or have to remember a list. If you're going to run a quote, you go to your link that you have with us, your individualized link, and click on the country destination that your client is going to or that you're going to be traveling to, and it will, if your country doesn't appear in that drop-down list, then that would be one of the prohibited countries. That appears to be the last question that I have, so what I will do is say thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'll encourage you, if you've got questions that have occurred to you, you just don't want to type them into the box because you want to talk to someone live, that's perfect. You should see your particular sales rep on the screen and their extension. If you don't see the person's name that you would recognize, just call the 800 number and we will get you directed over to the right person. I'll point out that next week I'll be covering our short-term medical policies, same time and same date. So if you haven't signed up for that, I'll encourage you to join me next week at 10:30 for our short-term medical presentation. Thank you so much for joining me this morning for trip cancellation, and have a good morning.